Imagine an insect walking across the forest floor, but as you look down, you realize the shadow it casts is not the size of a grain of rice. It stretches the length of a small dog. Its legs, thick and heavily armored in dark, shining chitin, span the width of a standard dinner plate. When it opens its mandibles, they are not microscopic pincers, but jagged, serrated biological shears large enough to snap a modern wooden pencil entirely in half. If this creature were to take flight, the hum of its enormous wings would not be a high-pitched buzz, but a low, resonant, almost mechanical thrumming that you could physically feel vibrating in the center of your chest. What you are about to witness is not a monster from a science fiction film, nor a fantasy creation from a forgotten myth. This is the documented, scientifically reconstructed, and fossil-verified reality of Earth roughly 50 million years ago, during the Eocene epoch. This was a time when the world you know today was utterly unrecognizable, a sweltering, hyperthermal greenhouse planet where the tiny, familiar engineers we step over on modern sidewalks ruled the sprawling undergrowth as absolute giants. If you have never stood inside the world that existed before humans, before the continents took their modern shapes, before the ice caps froze over, and before mammals dominated the earth, stay with us. Like this video so more people can discover the surreal titans that once walked this planet. Subscribe so you never miss a journey into deep time. And now, let the story begin. Before we can truly understand the extraordinary survival mechanisms of the modern ant, the frantic autumn preparations, the subterranean empires, the unbreakable social laws, we must first travel back to a world where survival meant something entirely different. 50 million years ago, the Earth was in the suffocating grip of a climatic extreme known as the early Eocene climatic optimum. There was no ice at the poles. Zero. Instead, dense, hyperhumid rainforests stretched all the way from the equator to the Arctic Circle. The air itself was fundamentally different from what we breathe today. It was thick, heavy with trapped moisture, and incredibly rich in carbon dioxide, trapping the sun's heat and baking the entire planet into a massive global greenhouse. If you were to stand in what is now modern-day Wyoming, or the fossil-rich beds of Messel in Germany, the light filtering through the gargantuan primitive palm leaves would have been a diffused, sickly emerald green. The forest floor was not a quiet place of dirt and leaves. It was a chaotic, three-dimensional labyrinth carpeted in rotting logs the size of modern passenger buses, tangled with vines and overgrown with giant ferns. The ambient soundscape of this era was a relentless, chaotic symphony. You would hear the harsh, shrieking calls of primitive, terrifying ground birds, the constant snapping of massive vegetation, and beneath it all, the deep, unsettling, rhythmic scuttling of colossal arthropods moving through the damp undergrowth. In this hyper-warm environment, insects were not bound by the physical limitations of the cold. Without freezing winters to cull their numbers or restrict their growth, they pushed the boundaries of their biological architecture to the absolute extreme. Out of the humid, steaming shadows of this lost world emerges Titanomyrma, the undisputed apex of prehistoric ant evolution. The sheer scale of this creature challenges everything we assume about the insect world, producing a sense of profound physical disorientation. The queen of this species is a true behemoth. Her body stretches over 2 inches long, and when she takes to the air during her nuptial flight, Her wingspan exceeds half a foot, the size of a modern-day hummingbird. To stand beside a foraging column of Titanomyrma is to witness an army of giants marching in coordinated, militaristic unison across the decaying earth. Their exoskeletons gleam in the dappled prehistoric light. A deep, iridescent black-brown armor with plates sliding over one another to produce a faint, audible, terrifying clicking sound with every step. Unlike the frantic, fast-paced scurrying of modern ants you see in your garden, the sheer immense mass of these Eocene giants gives their movements a deliberate, terrifying, mechanical weight. They do not flit. They conquer. They process their ancient world through a deeply alien sensory apparatus. They do not see the world through sharp, binocular vision like a mammal. Instead, they taste the complex chemical makeup of the dense prehistoric air with massive, constantly sweeping antennae. They read the forest floor not through sight, but through a complex, invisible, three-dimensional architecture of pheromones. Chemical trails that glow in their minds like neon highways through the dark jungle. This ancient habitat, these endless, unbroken global forests, provided a paradise of resources. Titanomyrma did not need to hide deep underground from freezing temperatures, because freezing temperatures simply did not exist anywhere on the planet. They were dominant surface dwellers, claiming the deep leaf litter and the rotting, hollowed-out hearts of fallen ancient sequoias as their sprawling fortresses. The physical pressure of the environment was light. The ground underfoot was a perpetually warm, damp, decaying sponge of organic matter. To sustain a massive colony of bodies of this immense scale, their feeding behavior had to be an engine of relentless, calculated consumption. They were formidable scavengers and terrifyingly opportunistic predators. When the massive carcass of an early primitive mammal or a giant prehistoric beetle crashed to the forest floor, the chemical signals of death and decay would drift through the humid air. Within minutes, the giant ants would arrive in their hundreds. Their feeding mechanics were brutal, efficient, and horrifying to witness. Their massive, serrated mandibles functioned like heavy industrial shears, specifically evolved to slice through thick, leathery hides and heavy chitinous armor that would easily defeat a modern predator. We know from the biomechanical structure of their fossilized jaws that they could exert tremendous crushing force. They did not quietly nibble at the edges of their prey. They dismantled their world piece by piece. They ripped away massive chunks of raw protein, carrying loads that defied gravity back to their sprawling surface colonies. They were the ultimate, unapologetic recyclers of the Eocene, turning the immense biological waste of a greenhouse planet into the high-octane fuel required for their expanding, warm-weather empires. But the Earth is not a static stage, and the golden age of the giant surface ants was doomed to end in geological tragedy. Roughly 34 million years ago, the planet's thermostat fundamentally broke. The turning point arrived with the Eocene-Oligocene transition. The continents continued their slow, grinding tectonic drift. Ocean currents radically realigned, cutting off warm water to the poles, and a profound, inescapable, deadly chill began to creep across the globe. For the first time in tens of millions of years, the atmosphere began to cool drastically. The endless tropical forests fractured, dried out, and were slowly replaced by open, temperate woodlands and the creeping, silent menace of the first frosts. For a colossus like Titanomyrma, this climate shift was an absolute biological death sentence. Their massive bodies, which thrived and depended entirely on hyperthermal conditions, could not generate enough internal heat to survive the new, freezing winters. The giant surface-dwelling ants simply vanished from the fossil record, victims of a world that had grown too cold to support their enormous, ancient architecture. Yet, the lineage of the ant did not end. It merely retreated, shrank, and became infinitely more complex, resulting in one of the most brilliant evolutionary survival strategies in the history of biology. To survive the killing frost, the ancestors of modern ants abandoned their colossal size, and they abandoned the surface world entirely. They went deep underground, and in doing so, they became the ultimate biological engineers. They learned to anticipate the deadly cold. As the air begins to chill and the leaves of the newly evolved deciduous trees take on orange hues, a desperate race against the geological clock begins. The modern worker ant evolved a body that functions as a highly calibrated, microscopic biological sensor. The oldest, most veteran workers of the colony can detect microscopic drops in the ambient temperature and infinitesimal changes in the humidity of the air. They feel the approach of the deep winter in their very exoskeleton. When the silent alarm is triggered, it is instantly shared with hundreds of thousands of inhabitants through a highly sophisticated network of pheromones, a chemical internet that coordinates the survival of an entire civilization. The response is a massive, frantic reorganization. Younger workers, who normally spend their entire lives in the safe, dark depths of the nest caring for helpless larvae, receive new, urgent chemical orders. They must expand and heavily reinforce the subterranean storage chambers. These natural pantries are dug deeper into the earth, their walls meticulously smoothed and waterproofed to prevent ground moisture from seeping in and rotting the crucial supplies. Meanwhile, the veteran workers embark on brutal, day-long expeditions into a world filled with lethal threats. The physical challenges they face are monumental, echoing the struggles of their ancient ancestors, but on a micro scale. When they locate a massive source of food, perhaps a giant fallen seed or the heavy carcass of a dead insect, they face a staggering logistical nightmare. How do you move an object 50 times your own body weight across a landscape of towering grass blades and treacherous, muddy ravines? They do it through absolute, unyielding teamwork. Brigades of workers lock their mandibles onto the prize, pulling in perfect synchronization. But the world is hostile. A sudden prehistoric-style rainstorm can transform stable dirt into a sweeping, lethal mudslide. When faced with raging, flooded micro-rivers, the workers perform feats of engineering that defy belief. They grab onto one another, mandible to leg, leg to abdomen, forming living, breathing, structural bridges across the rushing water. Hundreds of ants sacrifice their own safety, acting as biological scaffolding so that the rest of the colony can carry the precious food to safety. When violent autumn winds threaten to blow them into oblivion, they drop low, anchoring their barbed legs into the soil, resisting the sheer physical force of the storm with everything they have. If a sister is blown away, chemical rescue trails are laid down the moment the wind dies, proving that within the superorganism, every single life holds value until the winter locks them away. Their agricultural intelligence is equally astonishing. They do not merely hoard food, they process it. Certain species gather seeds and carry them to specialized drying chambers near the surface, utilizing the fading warmth of the autumn sun to dehydrate the grains. Only when the moisture content is perfectly balanced are the seeds carried down into the deep, climate-controlled vaults, protected from deadly subterranean fungi. They are practicing agriculture, a behavior they perfected tens of millions of years before the first human ancestor even stood upright. When the freezing winter finally grips the earth, the true miracle of their adaptation is revealed. The main entrance to the sprawling colony is strategically and deliberately blocked. Small, narrow ventilation shafts are left open to allow minimal airflow, but the brutal, freezing winds are locked out. Activity on the surface drops to zero. Deep inside the most heavily protected central chamber, the heart of the colony beats. The queen, massive and immobile, rests surrounded by her most vital asset, her workers. As the temperature drops below freezing above ground, the workers form dense, living spheres around the queen and the fragile larvae. They engage in a phenomenon called collective thermoregulation. By clustering tightly together and making minute, vibrating muscle movements, the thousands of bodies generate their own collective heat. They create a microclimate, a tiny pocket of tropical Eocene warmth buried deep within the frozen, Oligocene-style winter Earth. They ration their meticulously stored food supplies with flawless mathematical precision, lowering their metabolisms to a near standstill. They wait in the dark. They endure the isolation, surviving entirely on the strength of their preparation and their absolute, terrifying unity. The hidden layer of this evolutionary epic, the science that most people have never heard, lies trapped in fossilized Cretaceous and Eocene amber. These golden, translucent tombs from deep time reveal a haunting truth. The complex social structure, the caste systems, the division of labor, and the fierce, brutal territorial warfare between rival colonies did not evolve yesterday. We can look into a piece of 100-million-year-old amber and see prehistoric ants locked in mortal combat, fighting over the exact same limited resources, utilizing the exact same highly sophisticated military strategies, espionage, flanking maneuvers, and frontline sacrifice that you can observe on your driveway today. Their society, their laws of chemical communication, and their architectural genius were perfected while the dinosaurs still walked the earth in the blistering heat of the Mesozoic. And it was exactly this unbreakable social cohesion that allowed them to survive the catastrophic asteroid impact that wiped out the giant reptiles, the subsequent global volcanic winters, and the freezing tectonic shifts of the Eocene. There is a profound, almost haunting emotional resonance in reconstructing the inner life of the ant colony. When we study their behavior, we are looking at the ultimate biological sacrifice of the individual for the sake of the collective future. A solitary ant, isolated from the pheromone network, is a tragedy. It has no hope, no direction, no future, and perhaps no fear. But when bound together by a symphony of chemical whispers, millions of tiny, fragile, insignificant lives merge into a single, immortal superorganism. They face the unimaginable terrors of a hostile planet, predators 100 times their size, apocalyptic floods, creeping starvation, and the suffocating death of the winter freeze. With an absolute, unyielding cooperation that makes the greatest human empires look fragile by comparison. The legacy of the prehistoric ant is written not just in the fossil beds of ancient lake shores, but in the very soil of our modern planet. They survived the great dying of the giants. They took the bitter, lethal cold of a changing climate and turned it into a catalyst for extreme social organization. By retreating underground, by constantly turning the earth, bringing nutrients to the surface, recycling dead organic matter, and dispersing the seeds of the very first flowering plants, they silently and efficiently terraformed the entire globe. They created the rich, aerated soils that allowed modern forests to grow, which in turn allowed modern mammals to thrive. They are not merely inhabitants of Earth. They are the invisible architects of its living, breathing surface. They are a 100-million-year-old testament to the evolutionary truth that physical size does not dictate survival, and that the greatest, most unstoppable power in the natural world is the power of a unified whole. The prehistoric record is a mirror, reflecting a world far vaster, stranger, and more alive than we have ever been told in school. The giant, terrifying ants of the Eocene are gone, buried beneath millions of years of rock, but their direct descendants walk beneath our feet every single day, executing an ancient masterclass in survival. If this encounter with the deep history of the Earth opened something in you, if it changed how you see the tiny, overlooked creatures working furiously in the fading autumn light, share this story with someone who has never looked at the natural world this way. Every like and share carries these incredible stories further back in time, to the people who need to remember how wild this planet truly is. Subscribe so you are there when we go deeper into the next encounter with Earth's lost, prehistoric world. The ancient past is not dead. It is simply hiding in the dirt beneath our feet. Until next time.